Welcome, critters. I'm Clara Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plot lines, characters, and players through the lens of sacred reading practices. This particular episode is about Campaign 1, Episode 31, Part 1. Lots of ones in that. And joining me today is Petall.
Hello.
So the icebreaker for today is, what's your favorite meme?
Ooh, that's a very good question. There's a lot of good memes out there, and all of a sudden, every single one of them has escaped my
Yeah,
brain.
which one do you use the
Uh,
most?
which one do I use the most? I don't actually use memes a whole lot. Like I'll reblog a lot of memes on Tumblr,
Yeah,
but
that
I don't actually use a lot of memes. Uh, I really like just the vibe of the "it's fucking windy." That's a good
Oh,
one.
yeah. That is a good one. Yeah, that one changes. It's like you can apply it to a lot of different photos. It's not just like
Yeah.
the same one.
Yeah.
hmm Yeah, the ones that I use the most are, one is just a smiley face and it has its hands cupped and it's crying and it's like my precious. I use that all the time, especially when I'm talking about fictional characters. My precious.
Nice.
And then another one that I use all the time is Baby Yoda, Grogu. And he's like using the force, but instead of the force, it's a bunch of glitter on the meme, and it says like sending. This is what it means when I say sending you light and love. This is what it looks like because I'm just like glitter bombing you when I'm sending you good vibes. Those are probably the two that I use the most, honestly.
Nice.
But another one of my favorites is the art one. I don't know if you know what I'm talking
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one too.
The other day I changed it to ethics.
Nice.
Uh, Memes. Good stuff.
Memes.
Well, please join us as we embark on this exciting adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. As always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well, so please comment, like, share below. And ready? All right, let's dive in. Vox Machina are currently in Whitestone, Percy's home city, where most of his family was brutally murdered and unseated as rulers by Lord and Lady Briarwood. They are in the process of trying to start a grassroots rebellion among the townsfolk by killing off the new nobles who are terrorizing the city. The last episode ended with Scanlan splitting off from the party as they hit two different noble homes, and this episode begins with him slamming through Duke Vedmeyer's front door as a polymorphed Triceratops. On the second floor balcony in the foyer, 8 guards stand armed with crossbows next to the Duke himself, a hairless, gray-skinned Goliath wielding a two-handed sword. Realizing that the guards were expecting him and are prepared to fight him, Scanlan immediately turns to the right and charges into a barred door. His horns damage the door and it buckles inward, but it does not open all the way, so he pulls his horns free as the guards shift to get a better aim at him. The Duke heads down the stairs, grinning as he readies his sword and shouts to the guards to aim and fire at Scanlan. He gets hit by half of them, half miss, and he manages to burst through the door into the dining room, moving to the side and waits next to the door to attack the first person who walks through. The Duke dashes up to the door but does not enter. Then 7 of his guards follow behind him, and another guard attempts to leap down from the balcony but misjudges and injures his ankle, falling prone. Hearing the approaching footsteps, Scanlan drops his Triceratops form and returns to his gnome size. He peeks around the corner and casts Stinking Cloud, enveloping the entire group. All but 2 of the guards succumb, along with the Duke, coughing and vomiting. Taking advantage of the distraction, Scanlan clumsily slides across the dining room table. The Duke manages to escape the stinking cloud and glares into the dining room, and the two unaffected guards rush in, reloading their crossbows and firing successfully. Three more of the guards within the stinking cloud manage to shake off its effects, and Scanlan shouts, "Oh no!" and dives under the table, pretending to hide, then uses Dimension Door to teleport to the roof. Rain is pouring down, and one of the zombie giants is lumbering its way towards the mansion, so Scanlan casts invisibility on himself and starts digging through his pockets, looking for anything that he could use to create fire, which was the whole purpose of him going here in the first place. But he manages to find a potion of fire breath, luckily enough. Looking around for a hatch or attic entrance, he can't find anything, so he pulls the cork from the potion, drinks it, and then runs to the front of the building and begins to hear voices from the streets. He leans over the edge of the roof and unleashes a spray of fire from his mouth, igniting the entire building, the front of it. He does lose his invisibility by doing so, though. Panicked voices sound from inside the house. Two guards rush outside, searching for the source of the flames, and they see Scanlan peeking his head over the edge of the roof. So they pull out their crossbows and fire, but they both miss. They quickly duck back inside, and Scanlan runs over to the back of the house and repeats the action, igniting the mansion on both sides now. Looking back towards the front, he sees a pillar of black smoke beginning to rise up, but also sees the hatch slam open as the Duke himself pulls himself up onto the roof. Scanlan summons Big B's hand as the Goliath stalks toward him. Vedmeyer pulls back his sword to attack, but the hand shoves him off the roof. Scanlan hears him impact, then runs over to the roof hatch and blasts his final fire breath into the hatch, igniting the ladder as well as the two guards climbing up it. He runs to the opposite side of the roof opposite side from where Vedmeyer fell. The guards manage to douse the flames on themselves and climb up onto the roof, and they fire two bolts, hitting him successfully. Turning to face the guards, he stands with his arms outstretched, closes his eyes, and falls backward in a trust fall so that Bigby's hand can catch him and gently lower him to the ground. He then runs and jumps onto the gate, climbing over it and landing on the other side. He sees the zombie giant, the zombie giant stomping towards him. As it approaches, a number of figures swarm out of the nearby building and begin attacking the giant. So he casts invisibility again on himself and watches the fight from the shadows. After several minutes, the mansion is completely engulfed in flames. The guards and the Duke manage to escape, but they are searching the perimeter for Scanlan. As Scanlan watches the undead giant, he notices that the attacking figures are Whitestone residents that have armed themselves with makeshift weapons and armor. Yay, rebellion! Neither side seems to be winning, though, but the crowd has effectively halted the giant for the moment. So he waits because he's used up most of his spells by this point, and he watches the fight instead of rejoining the rest of the party. While all of this has been happening with Scanlan, the rest of the group begins their assault on Count Tyleary's mansion. As Grog and Trinket rush the front door, Percy, Vex, Vax, and Keyleth are sneaking around the back. Grog, already raging, smashes open the front door and runs inside with Trinket following closely behind. Standing on the second floor are 10 guards with their crossbows at the ready. Count Tyleary is at the top of the staircase and orders the guards to fire. 6 of the bolts hit Grog, who shields Trinket from them, like the good boy he is. Around the back of the building, Percy goes to the first door he sees and attempts to open it, but it is locked, so Vax runs up, handles it. It opens into a dark kitchen, and Vax clicks his boots of haste to head into a hallway with 2 doors. Percy goes in further, with Vax following closely behind, and Vex follows a bit further back. Opening the door to the right leads to a rather nice bathroom, so they try the other door at the end of the hall, but cannot open it. Back in the main foyer, Count Tyleary steps forward, looking down over the banister at Grog. Grog stares up at him, and Count Tyleary says, "Interesting. I figured there'd be more of you." Grog says, "Interesting. There's a lot of dead men up there." What a line. What a line. Tyleary then leaps up onto the ceiling, sticks to it, and skitters across it like a spider. Creepy. He lands in front of Grog and swipes at him with his clawed hands, then glares at him and hisses, licking his fangs. Grog decides to go into a frenzy of rage, granted, ignites his firebrand warhammer and recklessly slams it twice into the Count. In reaction, the vampire grabs Grog by the throat and the claws dig in. The guards all reload their crossbow bolts. 3 fire towards Trinket, and the other 7 aim for Grog. 1 bounces off the bear's armor, but the other 2 hit, and all 7 hit Grog. So he is now a crossbow bolt porcupine. Trinket cannonball rolls towards the Count, who dodges out of the way and claws the bear as it passes. Trinket then turns around and bites at the vampire, sinking his teeth in and pulling on him to try to break Grog free of the grapple. Still outside the building, Keyleth searches the sky for smoke rising from the Duke's mansion, but is unable to see anything through the storm, so she follows the others inside. She pushes past them, opens the door at the end, and inside they find a dining room with some windows and a second door that seems to lead into the main foyer. She walks over to the window and looks out, searching again for any sign of smoke or fire. She tries to call Scanlan over the message earring, but is out of range. Percy opens the door to the foyer and swings around the door frame, finding himself standing at the base of the staircase with Grog's above him and Grog, Trinket, and the Count struggling with each other in front. Looking up at the closest guard, Percy raises his gun and his eyes turn black as smoke begins to pour out of them. Percy casts Hex on the guard and fires 3 times. The first 2 shots miss, but the third immediately kills the guard, and the Hex moves to the next guard in line. Vax dashes through the dining room and slides across the table, which impresses Keyleth. She wishes him good luck as he runs straight for Tyleri and daggers him. As Vax and Tyleri lock eyes, the vampire sinks its fangs into Grog's throat and begins drinking his blood. Tyleri does try again, but his teeth catch in the chainmail choker that Grog is sporting. So instead, he gets a claw to the face. Grog manages to shove the Count away, but Vampire's wounds are visibly healing, so Grog hits him with his hammer and reopens them. The guards fire their crossbows. 3 hit Percy, 1 misses, 4 hit Grog. There are so many sticking out of his body now that they almost provide armor for him at this point. Vex makes her way into the dining room and Trinket claws at the Count, dropping him to his hands and knees, and then the bear clamps his jaws over the vampire's head and tears it off. Yay, Trinket. But the body turns to mist, and the mist is hovering there, ominously. Still thinking about how cool it was when Vax slid over the table, Keyleth tries to imitate him. She does slide successfully over to the door and sees the mist in the center of the room, as well as the armed guards up above. Assuming that the mist is some sort of poison, she casts Windwall to put up a barrier between her friends and the guards. She tries again to contact Scanlan, but hears crackling. It's too weak to get anything through, so she concentrates on the Windwall. Percy continues shooting at the guards. The first misses, but 2 hit. Vax slaps Grog on the ass and tells him to kill, then runs halfway up the stairs, leaps over the banister, and stabs the hexed guard between the ribs, killing him off. The mist that was once the Count cannot escape from the force of the wind wall. However, Trinket is also bludgeoned by the heavy gusts. Grog sprints up the staircase, slams his hammer into one of the guards, hitting twice. The guard retreats to the corner, terrified. Another guard fires a bolt into Vax. 2 guards nearest Grog pull out their swords and swing at him. 1 hits, 1 misses. 2 more fire crossbows at Grog, but only 1 hits. The 3 remaining guards all fire down at Trinket, but the bolts are deflected by the wind wall. He manages to escape from the wind wall and moves to stand near Keyleth. Vex finally makes it to the main foyer and casts Conjure Barrage at the group on the 2nd floor, including Vex and Grog. The guard that Grog had been attacking is killed, and Vex casts her Hunter's Mark on one of the farthest guards, who seems to be commanding the others. On Keyleth's turn, she finally asks what the mist is, and Percy shouts back that it's a vampire, so she drops the wind wall and fires a sunbeam directly into it, evaporating it as it screeches. Percy moves his hex to the next guard and heads up the stairs, aiming and firing his last 2 shots, killing off another guard. He reloads and moves his hex again. Vax runs up to the guard Percy just hexed and daggers, killing him off. He kicks the body over the banister and it tumbles down the stairs past Percy. Vex stops the body with her foot. The remaining guards look at each other, and the one who seems to be the leader shouts, "Men, run!" All 5 of them leap from the balcony. 3 of them land safely and rush for the door, but the other 2 fall prone. As the guards run out the door, Trinket claws at the one that Vex had marked, but they manage to dart out into the rainstorm. Grog leaps over the banister, holds his warhammer over his head, and slams it down into the torso of one of the prone guards twice, killing him. The other prone guard is completely terrified, trying to back away with a broken ankle, and Grog slams down or brings down the hammer to the knee of his unbroken leg, severing the lower half entirely. The Warhammer's flame instantly cauterizes it, so he doesn't bleed out. Vex fires a lightning arrow into the group of guards who are escaping. One is killed, the other 2 are jolted, glance at each other, and keep running. For a moment, Vex considers letting them go, but then her brother shouts, "Vex, no survivors." So she fires another arrow at one of the retreating guards, killing them. Readying her bow again, Vex shouts for the other escaping guard to stop and rolls high on her intimidation check, so he freezes and slowly turns around. She beckons him with a finger and hisses, "Get inside now." But Keyleth moves past Trinket and shoots a sunbeam at the terrified guard standing outside and kills him instantly. Keyleth searches the sky and sees a bit of smoke, but isn't sure if it's Scanlan. The remaining guard with his broken ankle and now missing leg hyperventilates, understandably, and tries to back away from Grog. Vax jumps off the balcony and stands next to them as Percy goes to investigate the second floor. Keyleth stays outside to wait for Scanlan's cue. Grog threatens the guard, saying that he will make his death slow and painful if he doesn't answer their questions. Vax clarifies that they aren't interested in him specifically, just the people he works for, the Briarwoods. The guard says that they are in the castle or possibly under it. They spend an equal amount of time in each. At Vex's questioning, he also says that there is no one else in Tyleri's house, as they were all waiting in the foyer for Vox Machina. Satisfied, Vex follows Percy up the stairs, where she finds black smoke still trailing behind him. Vax asks the guard for secret passageways or any information that generally shouldn't be spread around, and the guard says that the Briarwoods have plans for Whitestone, although he doesn't know what they are. He explains that the guards were supposed to stop the insurrection, so they gathered up certain people based on descriptions given to them and hung them from the sun tree as a warning. When they saw Sir Carrion's house go up in flames, they knew Vox Machina was serious. So Tyleri and Vedmeyer heard from one of their contacts that the group was planning an attack, and they prepared a trap. The captured guard mentions that he was involved in the hangings at the Sun Tree, and Vax asks him angrily about the child who was hanged. And when the guard gives no response, he slits his throat. The rest of the group seems to agree with the movement, especially Grog. Up on the second floor, Vex pushes Percy against a wall and looks into his eyes. She says, "Are you all right?" He says, "I think so." And Vex says, "Look me in the eye, Percy." He says, "I feel cruel, but in control. This is controllable at the moment," and she accepts it. Vex sees Percy's hands shaking and the smoke still slowly circling around his ankles, but he reassures her that he is fine for now and that she will know when he is not. Keyleth, still outside, now sees the dark plume of smoke in the distance, apparently from Scanlan's activities. She also sees people stepping out of their homes, so she casts her Skywrite spell and uses the smoke rising up in the distance to draw the Derolo family crest in the sky. Percy and Vex search through the rooms and gather a bunch of gold. They also find a full jewelry box, which of course Vex grabs. The master bedroom does not have a bed in it, though, so they head back down the stairs, and After a few more minutes, the noise outside becomes louder. Keela sees that the townsfolk have gathered whatever weapons and armor they can find and are forming small bands. Keela tells the rest of the party to start wrapping up their investigations so that she can ignite the building. Grog smashes open one of the doors in the foyer. It leads to a standard office room. He pulls the rug away from the floor and reveals a hatch underneath, and he excitedly shouts his discovery to the others. Percy continues checking the rooms, and Grog calls for one of the twins to come and check the hatch for boobies. Vax looks it over and finds no traps, so Grog flings it open. There is no ladder, just a 10-foot drop, and so they jump down and they find fresh dirt with a dark box about 8 feet long. Vax jumps down as well, holding his flame tongue dagger as a light source. The box is a fairly well-crafted coffin, presumably Count Tyleri's resting place. Grog guesses that there might be treasure inside, and Vax agrees that they should have a look at it. So they smash it open and kick it over. It comes off, the lid comes off, and a musty smell fills the air. Inside the coffin are a few small keepsakes and a cloak, and Vax takes the cloak. He cuts through the lining of the coffin but doesn't find anything else. Back upstairs, Percy rummages through the notes in Tyleri's desks. Most of them are trade ledgers, but he does find a note saying that the trade for the stone for which Whitestone is named has been halted, although the stone itself is still being mined. Percy knows that this stone is often used to create objects that are easier to enchant. All of the stone being produced by Whitestone is now being kept within the city, which means that the Briarwoods are making something big. Grog asks if Vax is done with the coffin, so they smash it to pieces. They both get the feeling that this was what the mist was trying to get back to. Keyleth sees another zombie giant moving toward the plume of smoke in the distance as the citizens of Whitestone attack it. Nobody seems to be heading towards the Tyleri house, though. So the party gathers outside of the mansion, and Grog tells her to light this candle. She casts Flaming Sphere and moves it all around the foyer, covering the room in flame. People in nearby homes press against their windows and watch this happen with smiles on their faces. So Vex casts Pass Without a Trace, and they all sneak off into the alley and head back towards the alcove, which was the enchanter's shop where they had previously arranged secret lodging. And that's where they break for the episode. So, what do we think of this first half?
It's a good half. It really shows off a lot of like Scanlan's abilities, I'd say. Like it's a pretty big episode, pretty big part for Scanlan.
Yeah. Scanlan's I can't help but think he's an underrated character, you know? Like he can
Hmm.
do like bards in general, I think are just underrated. And because I think Sam here shows how versatile they are and
Hmm.
how much impact they can actually have, because we don't often see that in the midst of battle because we have to wait each turn for like the bard to come up.
Yeah.
But when he's doing it back to back to back to back to back to back to back, he's got like a full arsenal to pull from.
So many cool abilities and everything. And I think like the way that I keep thinking about like this part in like the animated series
Mm,
because it was so well done and it was like watching this over again in the actual show. Like they
mhm,
changed around like some of the like order and locations of like the spells and techniques just to like
mm,
make it flow a bit more cohesively. But other than that, it's like a pretty faithful rendition of
mhm,
like the battle. And like I feel like they just because of the different mediums of D&D and animation that doesn't happen for a lot of the other fights, but this one translated so well into an animated thing, and they totally played into that too. Like part of the reason why Scanlan like struck off on his own in the animated series is he was explicitly saying that he wanted to show that he was like competent and not just
mm.
like the
Yeah,
funny underrated guy. And so
yeah,
I think the animated series only like enhanced these themes.
yeah, yeah. I'm also fascinated by the half elves in this
Hmm.
half as well because it's almost feels like a full 180 from the previous Circarian house attack.
Yeah.
Like, do they feel more, are they more willing to be ruthless in this scenario because they know they have the backing of Whitestone citizens now?
It's interesting. I found it interesting too how there are two different occasions, but how Vex was the one to want to spare. She didn't end up sparing the life of that guard because Vax told her to kill everyone, and how it was Vax who was like the one who like killed the guard who had strung up the bodies in the tree. Like I found that very interesting. So I feel like normally like Vax is seen as like more of like the heart and the more understanding of like people and like the value of life, whereas a lot of the time Vex either doesn't care or just like gives off the impression that she doesn't care because she's been like so hurt and doesn't
Mm,
trust easily. And
mm,
so it was interesting to see those moments of Vex wanting to let somebody go
mm,
and Vax being the one to do a very well deserved kill, but still
mm,
like not just like a in the heat of the battle kill, but just
mm.
like
Have
uh
we gotten to the innocent until proven guilty part?
yeah, I don't know.
Like, I think that's what Keyleth and Vax were waiting for, is they
Uh-huh.
were waiting for more evidence of guilt on the guard's behalf.
Yeah.
Because Keyleth is also the one who kills off the fleeing guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what they were hesitating on previous to this, is like they didn't know exactly what the guard's position was in all of
Mm-hmm.
this. Like, are they being forced to do this against their will? Are they being mind controlled? Or are they just assholes taking advantage of a shitty situation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think from what they've learned now from both hearing from the townsfolk as well as what the guard himself told them is that they are complicit in all of this.
Yeah.
You know, they are now definitively been proven guilty
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah,
it's a complete 180.
absolutely.
Yeah. And Percy is getting darker and darker.
Yeah, I loved that moment of Vex confronting him. I actually got very confused for a moment when I was listening to it because I am like near the end of the of campaign one in my
Mm,
like
mm,
first watch of it. And so like in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, they're together. And then I realized, oh wait, like they're not together yet. Like
yeah.
this is and so I think in a way that also just shows just like how good like the like stepping stone to that relationship were built
Yes.
because it totally seemed right to me that like oh yeah like Vex and Percy go off together
Hmm.
and I'm like oh yeah this I'm listening I'm watching for the podcast I'm not watching for where I am this is before all of that.
Yeah, we see a lot of good relationship stepping stones in this episode, I think.
Hmm.
Like we have Keyleth and Vax stuff going on, we have Vex and Percy stuff going on, and um Grog, I think, is also showing his more intentionally brutal side in
Hmm.
this. Like he gets painted as a mindless killer sometimes, of like just a himbo smashing things, but he had a great one-liner in this. He had
Yeah.
two great one-liners in this. Like
Yeah.
he's a lot more aware of what's going on than he lets on, I think,
Hmm.
sometimes.
Yeah, it was really a good episode for everybody.
I mean, we got some Trinket action. Like Trinket got the
Yeah.
how do you want to do this? Like Trinket never gets that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it was so, so good.
Why do you think they're working together better as a team now versus previously?
I think for one, I mean, there's the obvious answer that like there's more time passing since Orion is gone. Um, but there's also the I think now they're more on the same page because
Hmm.
before they were on different pages of like how they should like how brutal should they be in
Hmm.
their like acts of rebellion and trying to do
Yeah.
this, but now they know kind of more who stands where, and
Hmm.
so they're all kind of on the same page of these people
Yeah.
being like the enemies. These people, even the guards, are the ones who are oppressing the people of Whitestone. They're not like killing innocent citizens who are being manipulated and forced into doing things.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's a big part, is they're kind of all on the same page now. I feel like it just took some time for each of them as they went into Whitestone and were doing their investigation and figuring out what exactly was going on there and
Hmm.
how the factions were split and who's loyal to the Briarwoods, who's acting loyal to the Briarwoods, but it's only because they're being manipulated into it, and who is like against the Briarwoods. I think they have a much more clear definition of that now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about those three main conversations that they had in the last episode. Is like one, the conversation that they had that Vax and Scanlan had with the barkeep people and the patrons there.
Hmm.
Two, the conversation they had with the enchanter at the alcove. And three, the conversation that they had with Keeper Yenin and meeting, what was that old guy's name? That knew Percy from way back when,
Oh, Archie?
yeah, Archie. And I think the half elves needed those conversations to happen.
Yeah.
And B, I think narratively, we needed those conversations to happen. Like on the
Yeah.
surface level, it feels like narrative fluff. Like I'm thinking about it in terms of like as from an author's perspective, sometimes you have to put certain key conversations or certain key backflashes into the story that might seem extraneous at the time that then set the stage for character development later on.
Hmm.
And I think that that's what we're seeing here is like, I don't know if we would have had this group cohesion in this episode if those conversations hadn't happened.
Yeah.
Like, they
Yeah,
needed
exactly.
that evidence, they needed that context, they needed more information versus just going into an unfamiliar situation and being like, bad guys, good guys, And
Hmm.
it's not always black and white when you come into the situation. And I think it
Yeah,
speaks to the character of the characters
for sure.
of being like, we're not automatically going to sign up as anti-bad guy without knowing more about the situation.
Yeah, you need to know who's actually the bad guy before you go all anti-bad guy.
Yeah,
Because if you don't, then sometimes innocent people get caught up in it.
yeah. I mean, because there's so much gray area, and I think that that's what was bothering the half elves is like, are the guards within that gray area?
Hmm.
How dark are they? Can they be redeemed?
Hmm.
What
And
is
they've
necessary?
seen it before, like people who have been, like Desmond did not want to be working for the Briarwoods and was manipulated into it. So they had
Yeah.
already seen that there are people who exist
Yeah.
who have only been manipulated into it. And so
Hmm.
I think after being like faced so strongly with like Desmond's fear and like backstory and everything that he shared with them, I think they needed to make sure that they weren't like killing more Desmonds.
Is this fallout from killing the old lady?
It probably is, honestly.
Like, did they learn that like knee-jerk bad person response and how like detrimental that can be, and are now applying it to the new nobles and the guards in
Mm-hmm.
Whitestone.
I think so. I think that really put it in perspective.
They were they burying their shame for sure when it comes to, well, some of them, not all of them, when it came to the old lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what personal experiences are coming to mind?
I think what I'm like the thing that always gets me, and I know this is more of like an animated series thing than like the actual show, but Scanlan like just being so underrated and like not taken seriously just because he's like funny and goofy all the time and like cracking sex jokes and all these sorts of things. I think it's just a good reminder that just because like somebody in real life is like appears happy or like jokes a lot of the time, like I think it's just a good thing to remember that there's more depth to people. And yeah,
I mean, there's more depth to situations too, not
exactly.
just people in the situations.
Yeah.
Are there
Yeah, and I think it's just good to remember like not to take everything at face value. I think I just accidentally skipped over the personal experiences and went into I meant for it to lead into personal experiences, but I started talking and it did not get there. It got instead
we
to
can go
what we
backwards.
can learn.
Yeah, what personal experiences apply to that lesson?
What personal experience? I think it's just like I know my brain's going somewhere with this, but it's not letting me get there exactly. Well, I think in general, I think I've made a lot of like assumptions about
Mm,
Scanlan and like can sometimes like because especially like near the beginning before he starts going through his character arc, like the way that he like talks about women and stuff like that and like all these things like really rubs me the wrong way and like so it took a long time for Scanlan to warm up to me. And I think, I mean, it's not to say that if there is somebody who's being like a jerk or annoying in like real life, that like if it's like actually harmful stuff that like you should like brush it aside and like put yourself in uncomfortable situations. But I think it's a reminder, like, no, I'm going back into why am I going back into
that's
my brain just
okay.
does not want to put
I
me in
mean,
a
I think it's an example of how toxic masculinity can be a mask sometimes,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think there's a tendency to for people to use toxic masculinity language and
Mm.
jokes and behaviors as a way to fit in with others.
Yeah.
Like, I actually see that happening a lot with my grandpa.
Mm.
My grandpa is ancient. He's 101.
Wow.
And so he's got a lot of toxic masculinity in his system
Yeah.
because he's very, very, very old school. Very, very old school. And he just never had the, well, I don't know if I want to say had the chance, but he never was willing to step off of that train of
Mm-hmm.
using toxic masculinity as a way to connect with other men.
Yeah.
And so when my mom really started becoming a caretaker for him in his much later years, he kept trying to use toxic masculinity as a way to connect with my stepdad.
Mm.
And my stepdad was like, I'm not interested. He's like, no, like I don't know, like I don't like those jokes. I don't like those. No.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandpa was just really confused because he didn't know how to connect with my stepdad then.
Mm.
Like, he
Yeah.
didn't know really what to talk about him with if he couldn't talk about those things with him.
Yeah.
And it was really bizarre for all of us to like see happen. We were like, of course there's all kinds of things that you can talk about but for him it's so ingrained and it's
Yeah.
so habitual at this point that he almost doesn't know what the other options are at this point.
Yeah.
And I think we see that in Scanlan too, is that he's using it as a way to blend in
Absolutely.
for how flashy he is, for how showmanship-y he is. I think it's also a mask because he's just a squishy little marshmallow on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he can't show his squishy little marshmallowness.
No. It's like I think it just comes from like a lot of people who like have trouble being vulnerable. It's easy to use like humor as a mask.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know a lot of people who use like self-deprecation humor as a mask. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, let's stop that. And let's also stop like non-self-deprecating humor. I don't know what the right term for that is.
Mm-hmm.
Outside deprecation humor
Yeah.
as a mask as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. It is.
I mean, those are my personal experiences. What I'm taking away from it, what I might do about it, is honestly give them a little more grace. I know that sounds a little weird because I don't want to excuse it, I don't want to condone
Yeah.
it. But I was honestly in a conversation the other day where a white man was talking about how he's discriminated against because he's white. And I was like, no.
Oh.
I was like, no. But he's also of the older generation. And I think there's a way that we can be like understanding of like where exactly that's coming from, but also not necessarily accepting of the words that's
Yeah.
being said.
Exactly.
I was like,
Because, like, when you think about it, like, how are people going to change and grow if they just feel attacked all the time? And it's hard
absolutely,
because you have to find that balance. Like, first of all, it has to be a person that you, like, care enough about to put
absolutely.
in that work because, like, you shouldn't have to put in that work for, like, a complete stranger who might
Yeah,
not even change. But
yeah.
I think all the time about my dad, who is, like, he says he's a centrist, but he's conservative, like,
Mhm.
and is like loves listening to like Jordan Peterson and
Mhm.
people like that, and is just like, I want better for him because he's my dad and I love him and care about him. And like he's not as bad as he could be, and like so I think I see those moments of like hope too, where if I'm like maybe if I just like explain things in a right way, gently, kind of like try to like nudge him a little more to being a bit more like accepting of things, and like like it's hard. I'm constantly trying to find that balance between just like letting him say what he wants and like trying to give him that like space
Yeah.
and grace.
Yeah, you can't shut them down completely because that's going to breed resentment, I think, on their
Yeah,
end. And it might even make them dig their heels in more on that kind of
exactly.
stuff. But at the same time, you can't give it a free rein either.
Mm-hmm.
So you really do have to strike a balance. Like, God, when that guy said that the other day, I was like, oh my God, I do not have the spoons to have a conversation with you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And someone else that was with us just like completely shut down the conversation, bar none. Like she was like, we're not having this conversation at all. And so I
Mm-hmm.
kind of felt bad for the guy because I was like, oh, he just got shut down like entirely. And like now he's probably gonna feel like he's even more discriminated against. I was
Yeah.
like, oh man.
Yeah. It's complicated.
It is. It is. But you also have to have the spoons to deal with it. I
Exactly.
think.
And it's like you don't want to put yourself like I said, it's different doing it for a complete stranger than
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
someone you care about. And it has to be somebody who you're willing to put in that work to. And you have to be like for your own mental health, like accept that that change may not happen. You just kind of have to like be persistent.
Yeah. 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 Give a little grace, but don't give free rein. I
Exactly.
is the moral that I'm taking away from it.
Yeah.
But I'm also not everyone's therapist.
That's very true.
I cannot handhold through people through that process either.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
well, anything else you want to add before we start wrapping up?
I can't think of anything.
I mean, per usual, this is powerful stuff that we're talking about. When we get into these deeper topics, we get into these deeper topics. So, audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts, feelings, insights, stories with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role has sparked these kinds of realizations, thought processes, ruminations for you in your own lives. Special thanks to Petall for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always happy to be here.
Yeah, yeah. So next time we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 31, Part 2. And joining me will again be Petal. We're back to the twofers for these episodes. And I'm always looking for more co-hosts and guests. So if you're interested, hit me up. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below, follow us on Tumblr at CR. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free, and be the chaotic good you wish to see in the world. Take care, guys.